Sports Talk behind the scenes. Hey, it's me, Wanda B, and you are listening to, hey, I got a new little theme song. You'll have to check it out. Listen to it later. This is He Said, She Said on IntellectualRadio.com. We're an iHeart radio station. And so pleased to have you guys with me. If you're watching on Facebook, please share the broadcast. And thank you to all the IntellectualRadio.com viewers, YouTube, however you like to stream in and view the show. I appreciate you as well. So today I have a variety of topics. And it's kind of all over the board because they were sent to us in our inbox. So it's a nice way we decided, okay, these are the things that people are sending us. And we wanted to discuss them. So Bill Cosby was one big one, of course. So I'm going to talk about that one. but first, or not, or can you not? We'll make it brief. I know that one is a subject that I don't know. Do people feel one way or the other? I welcome the people here who make he said, she said what it is. It's going to be very few she's. It's going to be me representing the she's today, guys. So if you're on Facebook, you may need to chime in with me. I do have the woman whisperer here, though. So he may help you all as we discuss these different topics.
I ain't telling nobody.
And, so let's welcome our guests. We have one still coming, but James Borche, who is a life coach for He Said, She Said. Anybody, if you're having any issues besides anything we talk about here or anything in your personal business, I really would recommend James to you. So
what's up?
Please, and later on the show, we'll tell you how to reach him. And then I have the woman whisperer. My title, Kara Hollis.
Hey.
I like to think I came up with that.
You did.
You did.
And I do know other women do have names for him.
Oh.
Doesn't Xavier?
Yeah.
What does Xavier call you?
The ladies' hero or something like
something
that.
like that.
Oh,
So
call you a
Hero.
Right.
Hero.
He is the so I'm taking a picture mid-show. Don't mind me. If I could talk to my picture, but I was trying to get a good one. Yeah, I had to stop and pose. Y'all know how it is, ladies. You have so many bad pictures like floating around. You try to do a little bit extra so you don't have to. So, okay. So we have our panelists. We still have Ernest coming in traffic. So what we're going to talk about, this came from the group 30 and Up Doing Us, which is a group on Facebook that please join. They talk about a variety of topics. Very good group, and they send me questions from their group that have come up in their group during the week. And of course, Bill Cosby was one of them. So one of the questions that came up in 30 and Up Doing Us, please like their Facebook group, was, do you still support Bill Cosby even with 3 guilty verdicts?
Define support.
That's a good question. I didn't ask that when they sent the question to me, but support, I would think for me, because I do think I'm going to still support him if a Cosby rerun came on, which I think they're taking them all off TV right now. But if it came on, I would still watch it.
Now, do I still enjoy the entertainment that he put out? Yes.
Isn't that still supporting him, though?
I don't know.
Are you doing a plead the fifth on this or something?
Well, listen. The Cosby Show is on Amazon Prime. I watch the Cosby Show with my kids. I share life lessons from the Cosby Show with the kids. I will continue to do that. Do I condone his actions? No. But Bill Cosby, the TV dad, and Bill Cosby, the actual human, are 2 different people.
This makes me think of something, and I'm not trying to come off the subject, but it makes me think, is it any difference then, because this was put as an equal issue, the R. Kelly, that people support R. Kelly, but when women do that, they're kind of bashed for still listening to his music and it seems like that would be the same thing, that if a woman still likes his music but does not agree with anything he's done in his personal life, that would be the same thing.
I think, yes, I hear where you're coming from, but I think what a lot of people have been saying, and I've kind of been reading some of the comments, is some of the ladies are getting upset with the guys saying that guys should step up and do something about what R. Kelly's doing or stand up for other ladies. And what the guy's rebuttal has been is it be the same ladies saying that who would be.
I'm not referring to that post at all. I'm thinking just in general. If you support R. Kelly, and we have a group, he said, she said on Facebook, and something somewhat similar, but I don't want to get into, because that argument doesn't quite make sense to me. I just think just on the bare surface of supporting someone's artistry and not them as a person. But I'm not asking any guys to stand up against R. Kelly. None of that. Just what's the difference of those two situations? Supporting their artistry, his work, his TV shows, letting your kids view those shows, and still not being still totally in disagreement of who he was in his personal life. Should it seem somewhat equivalent to what some ladies do? Not me, because I'm not an R. Kelly supporter, but not his music. Not, I turn it off when it comes on. Well, sometimes I do snap my finger and go, happy. Oh no, I don't like him. So, but it's you all's facing this game. If y'all can see these men in the middle of this show, eyes fixated on this game out this window in our studio.
I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward, but I'm listening to everything you're saying right now. Because
what's the difference?
All right. So I don't think there is a difference. Actually,
I'm loving that game.
I really don't. I think that the same thing with if you watch the Cosby Show, is the same thing as listening to R. Kelly's music. You're supporting them. Their money is actually what gives them the ability to do what they're doing as far as how they interact with women, agree or disagree with the way they do it. So it is supporting them. Now
he gets money from it
because he gets right.
Watch it, he gets money.
Yeah, he gets money from it, because of the advertising and all of that. So it is supporting them. Now, does it mean that you agree? No, but there is no difference. As far as I am concerned, I don't support R. Kelly at all, but I could see myself watching the Cosby Show if it came on or whatever.
Will you listen to Happy People or Step in the Name of Love?
You know what? I'm gonna tell you, when it comes on the radio, I catch myself. I do the same thing. No, I'm just saying, when it comes on the radio, I must admit, I catch myself, and then I'm like, it's R. Kelly.
Oh, now I'm singing this song. See?
But I don't, I wouldn't purchase anything of R. Kelly's. I don't listen to anything new of R. Kelly's or whatever. But as far as Bill Cosby is concerned,
it's the old stuff.
You only
no, I'm not listening. No,
don't get me. Cosby is.
Don't get me. Don't get me wrong. I see the contradiction, but
but we will leave it at that.
Look, I see the contradiction. But sometimes we do what we can do to justify what we're doing, and so it.
Well, as long as you see it, that's okay. Because
So,
it does seem like a contradiction. That,
no, it is. It's absolutely.
Their crimes are somewhat.
Absolutely, it is.
Not similar, but they're crimes against people found guilty of them.
They're similar.
I don't know. R. Kelly hasn't been found guilty, has he?
R. Kelly hasn't been found guilty, but we all know he is guilty.
How do we know he guilty?
Because
I can't even argue that. I'm sorry.
You saw the video.
I can't do that. I haven't seen the video.
Oh,
but I can't. We know he guilty.
He's guilty.
But is it different because some people feel Bill Cosby is not guilty? Is that the difference?
See, this is my issue with Bill. You are a rich, powerful man. If you are using pills to have sex, you are inherently doing something that is shady and wrong. I mean, you don't need, if you're famous, one of the easiest things to do is get sex. So if you're using pills, then you are on something bad. It's just that simple. Like, who has to give somebody pills to have sex? Like, it is too many.
Especially when you're Bill Cosby.
Yeah, especially when you're Bill Cosby. I mean, come on.
I've seen the local stepping celebrity.
I don't. That's the thing, right? That's the thing I don't understand. If they are actually coming to your room and you are under the impression that they are coming for sex, Why are you still?
They are under the impression.
Right, and they're under the impression. Why are you still giving?
They say they're not under that
No,
impression.
we're just no. I'm saying no. I'm saying generally. I'm saying generally speaking. All right, because his only defense is that they it wasn't rape. So if he's saying he didn't rape them, then he's saying that they consented. Correct. So if they are consenting, why are you still giving them pills?
To relax them.
Why do you need to give? Listen, I have had sex. I've had sex before.
Yeah.
And I've had sex before. And
I've had sex before.
I have never ever had to give.
How did Joy get here?
Look, let me tell you.
Immaculate conception.
So I've never had to even give anybody a pill. Never even crossed my mind. Like, why do you have to give somebody pills to relax to have sex? There is nobody in the history of sex that has had to do that. For consensual sex. So consensual sex.
So let me get this straight. See, this is where we are real hip, not you. We as a society are hypocritical about the arts, the art. So are we saying that we won't support any artist that gives people pills to have sex?
No.
Your favorite, because people love Biggie.
Biggie did what?
It's in his song.
What'd he say? I don't know Biggie music.
Well,
people love the Ja Rules. People, forgive me, I'm showing my age now. But there are people who put songs. I keep them high off that ecstasy, and then go. Come on, they do. This is what they talk about. This is what is being glorified.
Well, Tucson. The thing is that this was 2004 when he gave that woman the pill. That wasn't 1970. So to me, I don't get it. Like, why are you giving women pills? Like, to make them relax? Like, why don't you want them to be into it? Like, it's one thing to giving pills in ecstasy. If you and a girl or you at a club or whatever, and y'all doing party pills or whatever, a party and all that, and then you end up having sex or whatever, that's one thing. You in your room and woman comes in and you're like, hey, here's a glass of water and here's a pill.
All three.
Man, I'm sorry. I don't care how old school that's supposed to be.
Old school drugging is okay when it's old back in the day.
That's
when
crazy,
drugging was
man.
in.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I don't know enough about the Bill Cosby case, and that's intentional because initially my thought was it's kind of strange that this man says he's about to buy one of the largest television stations, and then this stuff comes out to this magnitude. So the bottom line for me is if you raping people, you're giving people pills without consent and all of that stuff, I don't condone that. That's wrong. Period. Point blank, no comma. Because if it was my daughter, jail would be the you'd be praying to go to jail.
What are you saying?
You catching them hands.
You'd be lucky to catch hands too. You'd be praying to go. You'd be like, Your Honor, lock me up today. Because dude is crazy.
You're listening to He Said, She Said on IntellectualRadio.com, and we just are able to welcome our other guest. Hello, Ernest.
Hello, thank you. Sorry to be late.
So, Ernest, we are talking very briefly. In fact, we're going to wrap it up, but we were talking about Bill Cosby and with the 3 guilty verdicts, would we still support him? And then I mentioned that what is the difference of supporting R. Kelly I hear more people complain about the support of R. Kelly than the support of Bill Cosby. And so what is actually the difference of supporting R. Kelly's music and still supporting Bill's TV shows and things like that? Is there any difference? Do you have there has been a lot that women still will go, and I hope this is not true. They say that people have asked R. Kelly to do a Mother's Day brunch.
They love R. Kelly.
He just shouldn't be the Mother's Day brunch.
They love R.
Any
Kelly.
woman with a daughter, any woman who would say, I'm questioning that whole brunch. All y'all people who go to that one, I'm sorry. Yes, I'm talking about you. I do think R. Kelly is not an appropriate guest for Mother's Day brunch, but to say that what is the difference of supporting his music and separating that I don't support his lifestyle, who he is, I don't like who he is, but I like his music. For how is that different than I don't condone what Bill Cosby did, but I'm still going to watch the Bill Cosby show. And hey, I'm gonna watch the little kids. I can't remember that cartoon. I'm still going to support his artistry.
Yeah, I'm not supporting Bill. I'm watching Felicia Rashad and the rest of them. He just happened to be on the show.
What's the difference of women still listening to and rocking with R. Kelly now?
Well, I think one,
he doesn't have an ensemble.
Yeah, I think it's a judgment call. Yeah.
We do what we need to do to justify it.
Right. That was a real justification.
Beat is tight, something. But I think that is a dilemma. I mean, I think most of us, if not all of us, grew up, at least a good part of our teenage, if not earlier years, watching the Cosby Show and seeing what the Cosby Show meant to all of us. I think Bill Cosby happened to be the vehicle, just like Sherman Hemsley and Michael Evans, who founded the Good Times, who was actually the son on the Jeffersons, the first Lionel on the Jeffersons, who actually was the creator of Good Times. Mm-hmm. There were lots of people, including Norman Lear, for that matter, who was a white producer, who were the reason for these shows emerging. And there was Bill Cosby, but there were also tons of other people, as he was just saying, the cast of his show. Felicia Rashad, who herself was a well-known Broadway and other actress at the time. There's lots of people to celebrate what the Cosby Show was. It happened to carry his name because he was the comedian, like the Seinfeld or whomever, who was the vehicle that brought it to us. And he certainly was a visionary that was part of that. So we can't separate it. But I think it means so much to so many of us. And to some people, R. Kelly's music means so much to them too. I think there's been a long history in our nation of separating the artistry from the artist. And you can go even further. You can separate the athlete from the sport, from the sport, and his talent on his or her talent on the field or the court. And then politicians. I mean, all of us have some affection for the founding fathers, and they were slave owners, and as much as we certainly hate that fact about them and talk about it openly. I know I do, with Thomas Jefferson, just talking about it the other day, about how that couldn't possibly be consent, having all those babies with a woman he owned, right? So that is rape. But nevertheless, we'll quote what they say in the right moment about liberty and freedom, and our democracy is still the envy of the world with all of its faults. So there's a lot of, life's just messy, and it's hard for me to watch Different World, and it's hard for me to watch Cosby Show without feeling a sense of pride. And even when Bill's on the screen, every few scenes, I just go, God, he was probably doping somebody after this show, and so it's hard, but I still enjoy it. And I think the historical connection is there. So it is a dilemma, though. But I definitely think about the other actors, many of whom haven't had much of a career after the show, other than Felicia Rashad and Lisa Bonet. But a lot of them haven't had much else after that show, and they still get a lot of royalties from that. So I hope for their sake, especially after Bill passes on, since he's much up in age, that they will find a revival and an ability to share that work, even with the stain that he left on it, because they deserve, I believe, for the work they put in to gain those royalties, the writers, directors like Debbie Allen and others.
And I do agree with that. I think it affects Bill Cosby's show going off affects so many more people than us not supporting R. Kelly. That just affects him. Toussaint said there was a difference of the I'm not going to be able to quote you exactly, Toussaint, because it scrolled away, but there was a difference because of R. Kelly's victims were children versus, and that too makes a big difference. And I agree with him there. Toussaint also said
it definitely does.
He did found Good Times. Norman Lear stole it from a brother that's homeless on Michigan Avenue right now today.
The dude who wrote Cooley High.
Really?
Oh, wow. I've got to look into that story. Note to self. I'm going to research that. That's very interesting. And thank you to everybody who chimes in on Facebook. I really do appreciate you all being part of the show. It's like having extra guests. And I'm surprised that all these guys, you all watching the game and still participating. Thank you, because these eyes are fixed. I would have an all-male panel on a basketball day, even though it is fun having an all-male panel. Their eyes are locked on this game. David Seaton, who also has a show here on IntellectualRadio.com, Humanity in the Headlines, 1 p.m. on Saturday, says, Bill Cosby is not, he Heathcliff Huxtable. It is appropriate to compare and contrast the celebrity and the image that they portray.
That is true, and R. Kelly is R. Kelly. The other difference for me is
okay, I see what he's saying.
What we're talking about is something somebody did 20 years ago versus something somebody is still doing today and doesn't see anything wrong with today.
I agree that makes sense. That makes sense to me too, David. That if we're watching the Cosby Show, we're not necessarily watching Bill Cosby necessarily. We're watching a character he played. And so to separate the two, and R. Kelly is R. Kelly. When you go see him, you're seeing him. So it's the same thing. Cherie Thomas said, we're all more than the worst things we've ever done. But I personally choose to turn my back on Kelly and his art. Accomplishment doesn't sidestep accountability. Cosby also made speaking tours throwing shade at the least of these in our community. Bruh had some nerve. Now that I will say, if we do go back to some of Cosby's "I'm better than thou," you all need to behave and act a certain way. Yet we still support him when he's acting the way he thought he acted, as if he was above.
Look,
I can't.
The way I see it is that technically, they really don't deserve your support. To be honest with you, I mean, they have ruined enough lives. Now, the lives may have been ruined secretly before now, but they have ruined enough lives. I mean, it's not that much different than when somebody does something that we deem racist and we decide to boycott. I mean, they have done a lot of damage to women, and for some odd reason, it really doesn't get the same reaction that like something that happens in the race and racist or whatever. But it's a lot of damage done to women, and we seem to like be quick to forgive it.
That's spoken by the whisperer.
It's the truth, but it is the truth though.
You're giving them sound effects too.
But it is the truth though. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's done to women. Yeah. You talking about rape, but molestation, all the different types of rape or assaults or whatever. Violence, probably one of the biggest killers of women is men, but we kind of overlook it a lot of times. We don't get as mad about it.
Yeah.
And we still support the ones who doing it.
We do. David Seaton said R. Kelly, the artist, is not the man who is interacting with and or taking advantage of women.
I disagree with that wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I think
those women are after R. Kelly, the artist, Mr. 12 play. These other women that Bill Cosby was doing, they weren't after Heathcliff Huxtable. They were after Bill Cosby. You know, 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. I don't condone either of their actions.
So we will move on from that. I think everyone knows how they feel on the Bill Cosby topic. Another topic that came up in 30 and Up Doing Us was, do you feel that all couples should pressure each other to get married these days? Or they were asking about that there seems to be a lot of pressure amongst couples to get married. Is that
who?
With pressure each other to get married these days? And I should, as I read this, I will say hello to Tyson Smith. He is the founder of 30 and Up Doing Us and also a comedian. So check out his work. A lot of it is on social media as well as YouTube. Check out Tyson Smith, the comedian, or somewhere in Chicago. He'll be on a stage near you. So I'm not sure, and he's not here for me to ask him to define how that question came up in his group. Do you feel that all couples should pressure each other to get married these days?
If we're just talking about within the couples, I would say absolutely. Now, would I argue that no, they should not pressure each other to get married within the relationship these days. And quite honestly, a lot of men who I'm working with now, they're not seeing the benefit to marriage.
Right.
They're struggling to see the benefit to themselves to being married.
Why is that?
Because what they're telling me, when you weigh the risk versus the reward, the risk far outweighs the reward. Far outweighs it. That's what a lot of men are saying. The risk of divorce and
the
risk of having I'm about to let you into some sessions. The risk of having to put your life, wealth, purpose, mission in the hands of someone who may, at the drop of a dime, turn emotional on you is far too risky than the reward that marriage promises. This is their argument.
Women don't run that risk. I mean, now women make as much and have to split theirs as well too nowadays. So how is their risk any greater than the woman's risk when they're both equally joining a relationship that's equal?
It depends on the male and female. But if you're a male making 6 or 8 figures, 6, 7, or 8 figures, and the person you're with is not doing that, the risk in these men's eyes is that it is too great.
I think the risk is the same, but I just think the mindset about marriage tends to be more along men thinking about half, like Eddie Murphy used to say, right? Women weren't joking about half, although there were plenty of women making decent money back then, maybe not as high a percentage today as then as it is today. But, you know, you look at Oprah, she's not getting, she never was getting, I could told Stedman that 25 years ago.
She told Stedman
right, because it didn't make any sense, right? Because she had all of the money and she was the one at risk. I have female friends, particularly in California, but even in other states, who were partners at law firms and doctors and other high-level professions who had to pay alimony as well as split assets that they had earned. And they were in that the typical male position of having to give up a certain amount of money in order to get free of someone that, you know, in some cases might have been cheating and other things. So it's really an equation, a formula. I do hear that sometimes from men, and as someone who's divorced, it isn't a driving factor in my thinking, but it certainly is a factor. I mean, I met
Would you remarry again?
I would. I'm not, it's not on my agenda right now and on a particular time frame. But, you know,
it's like when I look down the list,
I
don't see that.
Number 862, get married again.
One, not two. It's not three.
It's not in the minutes.
It might be in my other notebook. But I think the reason why I say I would is because it comes with the package. If I'm in love and I'm with a person who I really want to spend my whole life with and share those things with, and that's what she and I both want, then sure, that would happen. But it isn't sort of like, because I've already been there, it's not like on the list of, hey, by a certain age, I have to do it. And a lot of people are in that kind of mindset when it comes to life. And a lot of, I don't want to stereotype, but a lot of women are. And I don't think that a lot of women think about exactly what the men that are in the counseling sessions are thinking about, because a lot of them have a lot to lose as well today. And I think we all ought to be thinking about marriage. Don't want to say it the wrong way, but it's the truth. It's almost, if not as much business, it's almost as much a business transaction as it is a romantic transaction, because there's so much that you put at stake. I mean, one of my good buddies passed away recently, and and the reality of the situation in a hospital when you're sick hit me. He had a wife that was very diligent about advocating for his care and all of that in the moment. But man, I'm watching them. They literally walk out and talk to her. Didn't matter if they had been married for the 10 years they were married or the 10 minutes. You unless you have clear directives and giving it to someone else, most people don't think about that kind of thing. Your health is literally in that spouse, male or female's, hands if you go down with some illness.
And and I know you're an attorney. I don't know what kind of attorney I should ask that, but if you don't have a spouse, who is in charge of your livelihood in the case of death? And
it's usually next of kin. I don't know. I'm not a family lawyer.
Okay.
But I'm a corporate side. But we all take some basic family law in law school. In general, it's next of kin. It's usually spouse, then either parents or children, depending on the stage of life you're in. If the children are adults, then they probably have a trump card, I believe, over the parents. But if you don't have children, then it's the spouse, parents, and then siblings. And for a lot of us, because I know my parents are both gone, I have 4 siblings, they would be next. And so which one, right? And if they get to squabbling, then what happens? So that's where a lot of the messiness comes from. So it's probably important for all of us to start thinking about, who do we want to make decisions? And frankly, start thinking about making your own decisions and predetermining some answers to questions. But I think at least determine who you want to be making decisions for you.
Who you're going to leave power of attorney to. And all. So, you about to read Sherry?
No, go ahead.
Sherry
read it
or
for
Cherie?
me. I think it's Cherie. Tell me again. Cherie has been a guest here and told me how to pronounce her name, and I'm messing it up, I'm sure. But I think it's Cherie.
Okay. Cherie says, I don't and won't do palimony. My prenup is simple. If our marriage dissolves, we ain't going to punish the other financially.
Right.
You are in the minority.
Mm-hmm.
You are in the minority, especially in the eyes of males. The laws in most states have not yet caught up to the movement, so to speak, in most states. And so the laws still don't favor males yet. They're coming, they're getting closer. In Illinois, you now went from custody to responsibility.
Right.
So that's catching up, but from a financial standpoint, still judges and things like that still favor women in the eyes of a lot of the people I work with. They still favor women, and that risk is too great in their eyes for them.
This conversation is interesting in the sense that I don't think that because of tradition, I don't think women who make a lot of money actually think about that a lot of times when they are dating men, because I actually know somebody who was married to her husband or whatever, and then when they divorced, he got half of her pension for like a certain amount of years or whatever. I know a couple of times that has happened.
Me too.
As far as men are concerned, I think that we are somewhat hypersensitive to that because we have seen so many stories, when the reality is not a lot of us really have anything, that is significant. Now, if you have something that is significant, I think you should get a prenup.
Significant in whose eyes?
Right.
Well,
because if you work your whole life if you work till you're 40 and you got a house and a 401k and a car, to you that might be significant.
But if you also married to someone who has something of equal value,
we have to split ours too.
Yeah, because look, most people that I know, now I'm just talking about the people that I know, the men and the women make pretty much around the same amount of money. I don't know a lot of guys who make way more than the woman that they're with. Now, if there is, if there's a lot of that I just haven't seen, but as of lately, the men that I know, besides one of my friends, pretty much, he makes significantly more than his wife. She's a stay-at-home. But any man that I know who wife or his girlfriend or whatever that works, he makes similar amount of money. I think that the issue with marriage in general is that we all go into it protecting ourselves, and we go into it being individuals when marriage is designed to be worked as one. And so that's the reason why a lot of times I think it doesn't work, because everybody wants to maintain the individual when it's designed to be one.
Okay, that's true. Let me quote David for a second, because what he's saying is true, but I want to clarify a couple of things. He's saying what we're saying is not true. He knows plenty of women over decades who have to give half their home equity in retirement to their husbands who they divorced. Respectfully, you gentlemen are quoting law. No, we're not quoting law. What we're quoting, though, is statistic. Yes, I know women who have had to give up half. I'm sure all of us on this panel know women who've had to give up half. But the majority of the cases don't go that way. That's not the majority of the case. The law itself, especially in Illinois, is that whoever makes the most money, they have a calculation so that the alimony or whatever it is doesn't go past 40%. So that's the actual law. But how it actually plays out statistically is very different. And here's why. A lot of gentlemen, pride won't allow them to go ask for alimony. Pride won't allow them to split or take, for many, pride won't allow them to take your pension. But when you're going vice versa, that may not be the case. That may not.
I agree with that.
I thought in my own, I'm just going to talk about my own because I've never experienced anyone else's divorce. They made me give half. I didn't have a choice. I had to give half of my he had to split his.
Then he requested
mine.
He requested it. They don't make
requested
you give half. He requested it. And was part of the request.
Well, I think generally when you divorce, and I'm speaking mostly from my experience of my personal divorce, but also other friends who've talked to me about theirs, you have to put all of your list all of your assets.
Mm-hmm.
But it starts with a request from someone or both for a dissolution, right? And often you settle and you end up getting to it on your own without a judgment. If you're lucky, have to pay the legal fees.
If you're lucky, right?
But once you start throwing everything into the pot, and this is where David is right, it isn't just the man's money at risk, and that's not at all what we were saying.
Right?
That's not what we were saying. In fact, I think we said the opposite, that it could be both. It just tends to have been historically that it is mostly the man. I think there's two things that go into that. One is the income disparity, where women are, unfortunately, in many cases, still making less. In our community, however, I think you're right that it's more equal. Because women tend to be, and I see more of our women who make more than their man because of the fact that women in our community tend to do better professionally in some senses, in that mid-level sense. The other thing that I would say, is child support. That kicks in. That's where the bias in many states is still towards the custodial mom, although with two high-level professionals, there's often an agreement to split 50-50, which then might nullify the need for child support going either way. But I do still see that a lot of men are very frustrated and angry about being ordered to pay child support when they feel like they have as much time. But that's really a function of negotiating a 50-50 split, and maybe there is no child support. But sometimes there has to be, because income-wise, they can't support a household where the kids live primarily without the extra money. So that man has to just accept, these are my kids and I have to pay the child support. It tends to be more the men than the woman that has to pay that, at least so far. Now,
right.
The one thing I was going to say, though, in response to people coming in as individuals, I think that's true. And I think you do have to, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, we have to come in with we're both all in kind of a mentality to make it work. But I do think that there is something to be said for people coming in and protecting their own in the beginning, in the event things don't work out. And I think that actually gives people a lot more freedom, in my opinion, because I know I would be, if I get married again and my new spouse and I have some money each, I'd feel better. And I'm sure she would, especially if she has kids or something, that she's protected what's hers. And she would then come into the marriage freely, much more freely able to interact, knowing that if I run around with my secretary or something, then she's not going to have to leave half of her stuff on the table because to a jerk.
Yeah, if I ever get remarried, we're going to have that up front. Like, we're going to have all of that, because marriage is more of a business proposition than it is a romantic one. Yeah. And so you got to have this information on the table. So David commented on and said, hold on, I lost it. He said,
check the panel. What's the odds? I'm sorry, read what, and then I'll get to what he's saying.
One of the things that David said is that Illinois is an equitable state, and the most you can get out maintenance for is 5 years. And what I said is that's not true. Having just went through this, I know for a fact it's more than 5 years. There's 3 different categories of maintenance. One is temporary, one is immediate or emergency, and one is life. You can get maintenance for the extent of your life, depending upon how long you all were married. Because mine was able to ask for 12 and a half years because of how long we were married.
My mom actually went through a divorce, and actually she went through a couple, but her last divorce, before they actually got married, they had a prenup, and basically what the prenup said was, if they get a divorce or if anything happens to one of them, everything that they owned went to their children, and and vice versa, or whatever. And then if they bought anything while they were together, then if they died, then it went to the spouse. When she ended up getting a divorce, her husband actually tried to take part of her property, part of her estate or whatever. And, because of the prenup, it did not work. And I think that, like when he was saying, if you have kids and you go into a marriage and you want your kids to be taken care of, because you can't really depend on another person to look out for your kids. I think most definitely there need to be some kind of prenuptial agreement that, what you have will go to your kids, for the sake of your legacy, because you cannot think or just, assume that somebody all of a sudden who was not with you is going to love your kids and take care of your kids like you would.
That's true.
I'm reading some of the comments.
Me and David going back and forth.
I'm confused as to what's happening here.
Because
you're listening, he said, she said on IntellectualRadio.com, and we are we went into discussing the pressure to get married, and then kind of going into, it seems that more men than women are feeling this pressure and find not seeing much value in being married. And it something Terry Connor on Facebook said is that are people going into marriage looking at the end, and it seems like that is
nowadays you have to. It's unfortunate, but this goes back to, because relationships, no matter how much I preach this on this show, relationships are still transactional. And so you have to look at when one person wants to dissolve the transaction, what that looks like. Unfortunately, until relationships get to a place where they are based on love, and I don't mean romantic feelings of love, but they are based on love and who you are actually marrying, not what the person can bring to the table. You have to go into it. You have to go into any partnership at least understanding what the end would look like. The same way you have to live your life knowing you gonna live, but you have to prepare for the end.
I think that's very true. I mean, 52%. I think one of the commenters was talking about the fact that, even on the panel we have multiple divorces. 52% of marriages end in divorce. If you did anything where 52% of the time it didn't work,
right,
you would prepare for.
What if it doesn't work?
It's not working.
And and as a male,
no,
75% of the divorces are filed by females. So as a male, these are the numbers men know. So if 52% of the time it ends in divorce and 75% of the time she files it.
And I think beyond financial, I think if you think about this, everybody knows multiple couples that are unhappy and are still together. So that means if 52% end in divorce, that means 52% of them, let's just say half of them end in divorce, which means by definition they're unhappy. And then a good chunk of the ones that stay together are unhappy. That means it's well over 60-70% of marriages are just not happy. And that's the loss that men and women, I was talking to some friends this week, both female, who are in marriages where they are literally sitting in the space of questioning whether they're going to stay or not. And that costs a lot. And I think a lot of men and women are thinking about that cost, the emotional cost, the freedom, the loss of happiness if it goes bad. And I know it's unfortunate to think about that going in, but I think sometimes you got to be prepared for that.
And I actually know some women who are in marriages. I know people in general who are in marriages that they're not happy with. The interesting thing about his number, and what actually made me start laughing, when he said that 75% of the women, or 70% or 75% of the women are right.
It's for me, Earl. I got it.
Do we ever consider?
1 second, guys. Let me take this phone call because it'll go. Oh, I lost it. I know. I'm sorry. Go ahead and get it.
All right. Do we ever consider the fact that
Tucson. Sorry
the opposite sex is so unhappy with us? And I'm not talking about men in this, just men in this occasion. I'm talking about men and women. Like, one of the things that I always marvel at when I'm in these groups and on Facebook is how, as soon as one sex says something about the other, instead of actually looking or listening to what they're saying, it's like we automatically get in this defensive mode, and we do not even take stock of what is being said and try to possibly improve ourselves.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is IntellectualRadio.com. He said, she said, who's calling? And what's your name? Where are you calling from? Hello? Hello, caller. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
This is Tucson. What's up, y'all?
Hey, Tu.
What up?
What do you have on the subject?
Run about it again?
I said, what's your opinion on this subject?
So I was calling because, well, Preeti got to it talking about the transactional state of relationship. 75% of divorces are filed by women, and then 50% in divorce, right? And then we said we didn't speak about the assumed number of just people that are unhappy. I understand the conversation that we were having, but I think the conversation should transform or transition into why are we so unhappy?
Bingo. That's next.
That's the real conversation. I ain't gonna hold y'all. Do you think?
Thank you.
No. That is.
And we will discuss that. What is it with men in this?
I just preached that this morning.
Unhappiness, which is one of our main topics that we were going to get to. Hang that up for me, the off button. Do you agree with this point? The person we are with, we let into our lives are reflections of our thinking, and I think that will all kind of tie into each other. So I'll have you address what Toussaint brought up.
So many people get into relationships without addressing their baggage, without addressing their trauma, without addressing their childhood. And what they do is they attract the thing. They attract who. Let me go back a second. We all, because I'm trying not to preach for a second. We all have our own system of beliefs or belief systems, and that belief system creates your universe. And when I say universe, I mean YOU-universe. Your belief system, it creates your universe. So you literally attract to you who you really believe you are. So, for example, when I have clients who come to me saying, I'm unhappy in a relationship. She doesn't love me or he doesn't love me. But then when you dig really down deep into it, that same story, they tell about every situation they in. At work, how you doing at work? Oh, I'm doing great, but they don't love me. And then, okay, well, how are you and your kids? Man, my kids are intelligent, but they don't come visit me enough. They act like they don't love me. Every relationship you have is a reflection of who you really believe you are or what your true systems of belief are. So people get into relationships and they're unhappy. And instead of looking internally, they say, I must be unhappy because of you, as opposed to, I need to determine what I'm thinking about, what's in me that is causing my unhappiness. Because you leave one relationship unhappy and jump right into the next relationship unhappy.
Hi, caller. You called in to He Said, She Said. What's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is David. I'm calling from Hillside, Illinois.
Hello, David. Our dear friend here at IntellectualRadio.com. You added in the headlines Saturdays at 1 p.m. What is your thoughts on this, David?
You know, I'm listening to this, and I just want to tell my man James I wasn't trying to get at him. Real quick. I just wanted to let him know.
For those tuning in, we have a Facebook lit up on this topic, and David is calling into that.
I'm a big boy. You can get at me. No, but so for those, yeah. Go ahead.
This is what I'm saying. I would love to hear you guys comment on this. We're talking about the whole male-female dynamic. From my position, women do a lot more due diligence when they are looking for a spouse. Women look into how much money is he making, how many kids does he have, where does he work, does he own a house? And men look at very superficial things. We're looking at how fine is she, how big is her booty, that kind of stuff. And I think if men did a better job of performing the due diligence on their spouse, they would have a better outcome. I'll get out of here and let you all talk about that. Thank you for accepting the call.
Thank you, David. Thank you for calling in. Okay, let's discuss that.
If you don't mind. I actually had contemplated writing a little, it wasn't going to be a book, but more of an article flipping what Steve Harvey did for men. And I was going to use the title something like how's he do it? Think like a man.
Think like a man.
Think like a woman.
But act like a man.
But act like a.
Yeah, that's it.
Think like a man, act like a woman. I think they want you to think like a man.
So basically, I want us to think more like women, just like David said when it comes to picking a spouse. Exactly what he said is almost the premise or the thesis of what I was going to write, which is basically.
Still do that, please.
I think I may, because a lot of what you started off talking about earlier, James, is driven in often, and Wanda put her finger on it. If you are if you're in an equal marriage financially, with two people that are about something, doing something, you both have a pension, you both have whatever things you value, then you're less at risk. You find that woman is more likely to want to negotiate a settlement because she's like, oh man, my stock is growing too. And so is his. I don't know if his is bigger than mine. Yeah, let's negotiate. And then they'll sit down and figure out a negotiation. I travel a lot, so I don't really want custody 100%. I want 50-50 because I travel and you travel. So let's figure it out. I've watched couples literally share a home sometimes, and they drop in and watch the kids so the kids don't have to move. You come up with all kind of creative solutions when both people have something on the table. And so that's the financial piece of it. But then you get to the piece of it, which is about their emotional health and the type of person values. I think that, yeah, a lot of us do get caught up in how that woman looks on our arm, what it makes us look like, you know, to our friends. She's not fine enough. And I just say things of that nature. So I would just say that men, we do need to do more about due diligence when it comes to the finances, when it comes to the compatibility, the emotional health. If you've spent time handling your emotional health, man or woman, you should definitely talk to somebody who spent time handling their emotional health, because there's no point in you being healthy and then having to go through the healing process all over again for somebody else that doesn't want to deal with their depression or something.
That's where the real risk lies, though. It's not in finances. Right. It's not in all of those things that are transactional. It is in the fact that is this person emotionally healthy? Because she let's from a male's perspective and mature. She could make she could be a billionaire and you could be a thousandaire.
Right.
If she is not emotionally healthy, and I'm speaking from the male's perspective because those are, like I shared with you lately, that's who's been calling me. If she's not emotionally healthy, she will destroy you. I mean, and vice versa.
The man will destroy her.
The man will destroy her, and vice. So the true risk is getting with someone who is not emotionally stable or emotionally in a good or healthy place.
I think that this has a lot to do with how we like people to see us. Like, everybody has an image that they want to somewhat portray, and then you have, you know, who you are in reality. And I think that sometimes when men, there's certain ways we feed our ego, and there's certain ways that a woman can feed our ego. She can either do it with her personality or she can do it with her looks. And so a lot of times, you know, there are men who like, okay, I have this woman. They know if they walk out the house with this woman, there are going to be other men who giving them thumbs up. And that's something, and that's a way that we superficially feed our ego, when a lot of times because of that, we don't pay attention to the lack of character, the lack of emotional stability that the woman may have. And then when things go awry, you find out that that's something that you should have paid attention to.
What I'm noticing with men a lot, and I'm just getting on men today, for now, I should say, we see it, we dismiss it. We see, because you see how she treated her friends. You see how she talked to her friends. You see how she talked about her friends. But you don't think she's going to do that to you. Right. And what we dismiss is, this is not what she is doing. This is who she is.
Yes.
And more so, it is a reflection of who you are, that you think this is what you deserve.
Exactly.
That's the part that really came home to me as I was struggling after my marriage ended, and even during, but after, was I recognized that insecurity that I carried into my marriage, and that while it was something that I would prefer not to have been there, I should have paid attention to the fact that it was there.
Right.
You know,
yes.
And I should have thought, okay, what kind of women do you need, or what kind of, and for me, it was just somebody that I could open up and talk to. Which, the ironic thing about it is, my ex and I were both friends with the couple when my best friend passed. And so we've been interacting. We're friendly and we get along, but we even had more intensive times over the last few weeks since that happened to talk. And the level of growth in both of us has been great. We talk about a lot. We haven't had deep conversations about our marriage, but we've talked, and I can see the growth in her, and I hope she can see that in me. I know I see it in myself from that. And it's just ironic that had I just owned it, maybe we could have talked it through rather than me trying to keep my face a certain way so that she didn't see it, because she's gonna see it. She live in the house together, you know, and it's gonna come out. How she said something meant more than what she said, because my insecurity was leading my thought process. It was leading the way that I was interacting. And had she paid attention to that, maybe she might have made a different decision. And had I paid attention to how her words and her attitudes impacted me, I would have made a different decision, because somebody else be with her and love every word out of her mouth. And somebody else would be with me in the same thing, but it may be not for each other. And I think, though, that there is an element about this is all I deserve. Because when somebody gives you an attitude and then you try to talk them out of their attitude,
right,
rather than saying, see ya, then you really are telling yourself, this is what I deserve.
And you're telling them that.
And you're telling them that. And I ran into somebody who I was, just dated casually. We just met. It was nice. We're getting along. And then this person just felt the need to just be critical about little things. And my feelings weren't necessarily hurt, but I was like, if she's like this and doesn't know me, dang,
right.
It's gonna be when she has the right, because now we're together, it's gonna be a mess. So I just looked at it and said, maybe you should find somebody you actually like and get along with. Because I don't want to be around somebody who criticizes me, and I don't want to be around somebody I feel the need to criticize all the time. So maybe you should go, because I'm 48 and I'm gonna be who I am right now. And so go find that dude that does this and doesn't do that and does the other thing that you like so much. And don't sit here trying to change this old horse, because I ain't changing it, not that much. So it was early on, and so I was able to see that, and I was like, good. I kind of did a little pat on my back, because I felt like I didn't sit there and try to live up to this standard that she was tossing at me. I said, I'm a successful man. I'm good. There's plenty of women that's waiting to take a date with me, right? And they may hate me like you do, or they may like me like the other. But at the end of the day, I don't have to conform myself, and I don't have to necessarily redefine what's good or bad about me because of what you said.
But that's growth, and that's confidence in yourself. And I think that's kind of what James is saying. When you have that feeling about yourself, then you don't try to alter yourself for someone else or see yourself through their eyes or fix what they say needs to be fixed about you. If you're very secure in who you are, why you feel what you feel, and that, then we are choosing people based the reflection of what we think about ourselves. And as you saw the reflection of what you're like, that's not what I think about myself. That's not how I know. I mean,
and she was immediately dismissed.
You know what?
And that's what should happen.
You know what? But you know what I think is interesting is that there are a lot of people who think that they should be able to complain about you and tell you stuff and constantly criticize you while you still be with them. I always tell people who date me, like, you're not going to just sit here and complain about me, because the more you complain about me, I'm just taking it as if you don't want to be with me, whether that is true or not. I'll never forget this time. There was this, I was dating this young lady or whatever, and she wouldn't allow me to sleep, right? And so I would tell her,
why not?
Wait.
What did she have against sleep?
Allow you to sleep. Wake up, boy. Wake up.
Wake up. Oh, you doing it again.
She tried to slide right back.
You know what I'm saying? She didn't allow me to sleep. And hold on. You gotta go back. What's going on? Did you snore?
No.
What was going on?
She wanted to spend time with you.
Okay, look. So we all right. She worked. We both had strange schedules, right? And so she worked in a hospital. I worked in trucking. And if you work in transportation or you work in a hospital, you get caught up with crazy hours. So sometimes I would have to work early in the morning, and when we were together, she wouldn't allow me to sleep, or I would be asleep because I've worked nights or something like that. And so because she would be up, she would keep trying to talk to me. And it just, I would go to work, I would be tired, all of that stuff. And the thing is that I don't complain about anything unless what I'm complaining about will cause me to break up with you. People are not used to that.
A lot of guys.
People are not used.
Paradigm.
Okay.
Say that again.
I will not complain about stuff unless what I'm complaining about will cause me to break up with you.
Yes,
I don't do that.
That is a male paradigm.
I don't just complain to be complaining. What I am telling you is that, right. And so because I'm like that, That is how I take it when others. So when I would tell her, listen, you need to let me sleep, eventually I ended up breaking up with her. And when she asked why, I said, because you would let me
Need sleep.
And her response was, you never said it was a deal breaker.
I didn't think I had to.
I shouldn't have to. And so when people complain about me, my thing is that you're complaining because you don't like being around me. And if you don't like being around me, I'll help you out. I'll help you out with that. And I'll just remove myself from the situation. Because the way that I see it is this: if whatever I am, good or bad,
you about to fight? What you taking your jewelry out for, James?
No.
We just opened a can.
So-
what is happening here?
So-
Why is the jewelry coming off?
We just opened the can, boy.
whatever I am,
Scaring me.
whatever I am, good or bad, I'm not mad about. There are certain things that I know that I can improve on or whatever, and in my own way, I'm doing that. But at the end of it all, I will tell you, this is this and that is that. So if you don't like it, then you may need to make a different decision. But what you're not going to do is continue to complain about it.
So psychologically, let me tell you what happens and what's going on. In this type of an instance, the first question we as men have to ask ourselves is, why do we keep attracting people who keep complaining about us? Okay. Now, that goes back to childhood. They typically say 0 to 5 years old. That goes back to how, when we were younger, our needs did not get met or may not have been met in a timely, healthy way. And so we developed a story that we have told ourselves about how our needs should get met. Now, what that ends up doing is the true story, or as I say, what lies beneath, the true story is absolutely underneath. It's the subconscious story that you tell yourself. So, for example, many of us, because of whether it's abandonment issues or separation or how we were done younger, we tell ourselves, I'm not really worthy of the true love and the true happiness. Now, that's what's playing in the back of our mind. What's coming out of our mouth is, I ain't gonna let you talk about me. But what happens is, what's playing in the back of your mind is emitting energy like crazy. And it is attracting someone who is going to interact with you the same way the trauma interacted with you as a youth. And so what we have to do, this is why emotional clearing is so critical, and understanding the trauma or the pain of our youth is so critical, because if we don't do that, we're going to jump from one situation or relationship to the next that mirrors all of the other ones. And it's going to continue to mirror what I talked about in church today. Is it's going to continue to mirror until you're born again, but it's going to continue to mirror it until you clear that belief system completely out.
What happens if you get born again? How else does it clear? Because I don't know if I'm gonna get born again. I'm not even sure I know what that means.
So I use a different term. If you don't clear that belief system out, clearing out a toxic belief system or a negative belief system about yourself and replacing it with a positive belief system is the process of being.
A process. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think you said a mouthful, man, about the men. We complain. Most men, it's like generalized. A lot of us complain about the things that are deal breakers, because I think somewhere we've been trained up by other men that you don't just get on. You don't walk into some woman's house and start complaining about your wife. You don't do that. Now, women, on the other hand, they're not necessarily trained to do that, but they're not. I'm gonna say double negative. They're not trained not to do that as much. Because in a way, you hear women talk about, I got to form him.
Teach him how to treat me.
And it's kind of like I don't do projects. I used to do it. I was a captain, saver.
Captain Saver.
But yeah, but
you had a cape on?
That lasted maybe a couple years in my 20s. So I'll let that go quick. But I don't do projects. If I look at you and I need you to be 80 pounds lighter, then I'm not dating you, because I'm gonna find somebody 80 pounds lighter than you. That's what I'm gonna do, right? So I don't have a weight thing. I was just using that as an analogy, but it's just, that project mentality is not good. And especially when it comes to how somebody talks to you, I'm going to make you love me, or I'm going to make you appreciate me. That doesn't work.
But I think women go for the project mentality more so.
And some men do too. You know, a good number of men do too. We talked about this. I think it came up 2 weeks ago where it was on one of your shows I was listening to, about how, and I commented that day about how some men like a woman that needs them and wants that need. And it's kind of like, no, I kind of prefer somebody that wants me, that needs me. And I think some men like that project because it feeds that ego, and it feeds that sense of security that she needs me and doesn't have enough. And then on the flip side, they're complaining, but James says, because she's taking half my stuff. It's like, well, you should have thought about that when you married someone who didn't have anything and you felt like you needed to be needed. Well, guess what? You're divorced and you're still needed financially. So that's just the way it works. But I do think, I just want to say this real quick, just having someone speak to you a certain way when women are criticizing a man, you've got to know when you're dating a man who's sensitive and who isn't. Because I know that myself, to be on the more sensitive side, I don't mean sensitive like Michael Jackson singing love song. I mean like sensitive to criticism. I take it just like you do. You don't like me. I mean, you don't like me. You really don't like being around me. And when somebody's like, well, how come you haven't called? I'm like, every time I'm near you, you got an attitude about something I'm doing or not doing. And you calling me a name and don't even realize you're doing it. And I said, you clearly aren't into me. And it's like, no, I'm really into you. Well, could have fooled me. You know, you don't criticize everything I do and make me think you're into me. And so I'm usually gone by then.
But the one thing I would suggest to women who find themselves complaining about things, there are things that is just a part of a person. And then there are things that, you know, maybe a person might want to improve. You're not going to change anybody who don't genuinely want to change whatever it is you're talking about in the first place. Even if he decides, or, you know, even if they decide to like do certain things as far as improvement, if it's not a genuine thing in him, it's only going to last temporarily. And then after he gets comfortable, after you get comfortable, whatever, it'll start back. So I think that sometimes we need to look at what it is that we're complaining about, and we need to just think to ourselves, all right, is this who they are? Because if it's who they are, then now you just have to make a decision. Is this the deal breaker or is it not? Because it's likely if a person tells you, well, that's just me, you need to make the decision. Because complaining about it won't do anybody any good. There's nothing good that comes from that. It really doesn't. And then a lot of times, you know, people are pretty much responsible for their own unhappiness. Like, is it really that serious? Because if you're not leaving, it's not that serious.
Good point.
So let me just say this. Everybody is responsible for their own unhappiness. If we don't get that, I have done no good. You are responsible for your happiness, nobody else's. So the relationships are... Oh, I can't believe I'm quoting this guy. But that's you. Relationships are mirrors.
You did say that.
They are. Most people get into relationships and project. So most of the time, what your spouse is complaining about is something they see in themselves. Subconsciously. Not always. But most of the time, what gets to you is what you see in your spouse that is really within you. It gets to you. However, though, you as the spouse have to be able to take criticism. Criticism kills relationships. But the reason criticism kills relationships is it infuses negativity into the relationship. But if we taught people how to not internalize the criticism, but hear it for what it is, for a cry from your partner, hear it for what it is, and not take it to the level where it hits the sub. Here's why criticism kills us. It hits the subconscious story that we've been telling ourselves. Every man on this panel summarized the criticism to mean, you don't like me. We didn't even discuss what the criticism could have been. But when you criticize the male, when you criticize certain men, I should say, the men who have not, and I hate to say that we struggle to deal with our own trauma, what we take it to mean is you don't want to be with me.
So what
It's
does
me
that
you
mean
don't
for
like.
a woman when the woman is criticized?
It depends on how she takes it. Because again, remember, criticism, people criticize themselves in the mirror.
And
That's what you're doing. People look in the mirror, which is you, and I start talking about you. What I'm really saying is I don't like in you what I know I have in me.
So if you can't do it, I don't think you can do this, is saying that about themselves.
So for example, if you say to me, Wanda, James, you know what? I'm gonna start my own nationally syndicated show. And I'm gonna be like, why would you do that? What I'm really telling you is I don't think I could do that. So why would you think you can do that? I'm not saying, that's exactly what they're saying. But the underlying true belief is I don't know you can do it or not. I know I can't do it. And so we start to talk about when people talk about you, what they're really doing, it's talking about them almost all the time. So listen closely to what they say.
So listen closely to what you say as well. I mean, the words that are coming out of our own mouth.
Listen closely to the words coming out of your own mouth. Listen
because
closely.
it may be telling you something about yourself.
I know it is. Always is. Yes. Listen closely to the words coming out of your own mouth, because they might be saying you talking about yourself.
There's something I kind of want to address something he said about the criticism. He said that his comment was, if every time you're around me, you're complaining or you act a certain way. And that's what it is. It's not necessarily about, hey, look, you could be better at this. It's if I'm with you 4 times out of a week or whatever, and 3 of the 4 times I see you, you have some complaint.
You don't even like me. It's
kind of like, yo, why are you around me? Like it's one thing to like have discussions or whatever, and we discuss like, things that maybe we could do this, that, and the other. But my whole thing is this, is that if I'm around you because I want to enjoy your company. I can't fully enjoy your company if part of that time is, me criticizing you or you criticizing me. That's not fun. That's not pleasant. That's not anything that, I'm not, if I want to be criticized, I'll go to work.
Well, let me ask this. Is this saying that the person who's criticizing him consistently like that are truly, truly unhappy people
don't themselves? Yeah.
So
and it's
not even to worry about whether that person, which is what Ernest kind of brought up, to worry about how much they're criticizing you. You're looking at someone themselves who has a lot of issues,
who's broken in
themselves, they're crying for help. But what if we don't want to help them though? I mean,
you know what?
I'm above my pay grade.
Give me any criticism. I'll tell you what they're really saying. Give me one.
No, I'm just real quick. I actually said that to one person. I actually said to a person, your problem is not with me. Your problem is with you.
You can't say that out loud, but you got to know that. But
he was on his way out.
He was on his way out.
But I was on my way out.
So for example, give me an example of what criticism somebody might say.
Well, they will say it's constructive. Because that's what most people
that's what they think it is.
Is that they're just trying to be helpful with all the things.
You don't construct with something designed to destruct. You can't construct.
I can't think of an example. Can I think of an example? You guys women probably actually vocalize complaints more.
Don't listen to them. Huh?
You all can't even think of one.
I'm not listening to that.
You know what? I could.
That's true too. What? So I'm saying if you attract that, you're probably unhappy too. It's the truth.
It is.
If you attract someone who is unhappy, that is a reflection of who you really are inside.
I can agree with that. I've always thought like that law, they say, well, you attract what you are. I don't believe that. I don't necessarily believe you attract what you are. What I believe is that you are what you allow around you, which to me is different, because somebody could come to you and whatever, but if you don't let that person continue to be in your space, then, they just whatever. But you attract, or you are what you allow around you, what you surround yourself with on a consistent basis. That's how I see it. I don't know if it's just plain semantics.
Same thing. I think it's semantics, because
I don't.
Initially, why anybody is drawn to you is never going to be about who you are. It's going to be because of how you look. I mean, the initial attraction is always going to be something on the surface.
That's why I make.
So who becomes who you allowed that time? No, you think you can attract somebody just from looking?
Your energy draws people. It hasn't got anything to do, because you can see 15 people who look just like Ernest, but one of them will draw you.
Okay.
It's about the energy that they're putting out, and the energy that you're putting out comes from your subconscious and what you truly believe.
The one thing that I'll point out from my experience is when I was in a bad space in some of this, even when I was in the bad space, I would always attract different types of people, and I would always note, like I did even when I got into a real serious relationship once with someone, and there was two alternatives right there who I was really attracted to, really into. And I literally said I feel like I can tell her almost anything. And then I went with this one. You know what I mean? It's like, so
why?
Despite
because that's what you truly believe.
Here's something that people overlook, and it comes. I got this from talking to some people who deal with either alcoholism or children of alcoholics and addicts and what have you. And abused, you gravitate to what feels normal to you.
Bingo.
And while you can logically say, I don't want some man who's gonna be ... there's something comfortable and familiar about that man that controls you, if that's what you had growing up, or if that you had in your first marriage. There's something comfortable about that nagging woman when your mom nagged your dad, even though you don't want it. But there's something
familiar.
There's something familiar. Sometimes you get it and it doesn't always look exactly the same, so you kind of sneaks up on you. But it's something comfortable and familiar. That's why people fall back into dysfunctions. All of us.
And let me tell you where the familiarity comes from. Birth to 5 years old. Mm-hmm. That's where the familiarity comes from. And so if you don't address what happened, birth to 5, and the story that you made up in your head. Remember, your brain wasn't even developed, and you already deducing logically why this is happening.
Yeah. You're already telling yourself a story.
A story
before you open your mouth.
Before you know how to speak.
And say to me, "Hey, you need to show up on time." I might hear that and then go, "Oh, dang, I can't be late again." And you might fix the problem. But there's also a reverberating conversation already in my head. Oh, she don't think you're good enough. She doesn't think you're
bingo.
Because I'm already telling myself that.
And you've already been telling yourself that.
Already going. And so one of the ways that you heal is you become. I'm familiar with my big conversation.
Come on, preach. There you go.
And when you say something to me and we're getting along real great, and then I'm all of a sudden like, oh, mad or feeling rejected, I stop myself and go, oh, it's that conversation. Again. And then I pull myself out of it and I go, yeah, of course she's mad. You made her wait 15 minutes in the heels in the cold.
Bingo.
And then I'm back in the moment with you and going, all right, you know what? I'll be on time next time. And I'm sorry, here's what happened. As opposed to making it about me, then either I bow my head and slump into my low self-esteem, or I get angry and fight you. I didn't, I'm not fighting that you said I was late. I was either late or I wasn't. Right?
Fighting the conversation.
I'm fighting this conversation that was already happening. And when you're having, and that's why two people can be talking to each other and they're having two different conversations.
Bingo.
Because they're talking to themselves.
Now
you know what's interesting about this is that what we're actually discussing right now, as far as the emotional maturity of men and us fighting our past, is I think that is why women who are successful, who may have like high character, whatever, men become a little intimidated by them because we see them as a person we have to raise up to, that they're going to hold us to a certain standard. And if you're not all the way comfortable with who you are, a person like that, generally speaking, for women and men, actually can be a little intimidating, because now you're looking at yourself and you're saying to yourself, are you worth that person, or are you good enough for that person? Because of the way you feel about yourself.
I agree with you, Akira, but I want to take this a step further than that. It has nothing to do with the other person at all. It's that conversation that you begin fighting, and whoever she is, and she could be anybody, she triggers the conversation that you have been having since you were 1 year old.
I think
that's what I'm talking about.
Is that we will find something, but in his case, when you find the person who is, that's the thing. A woman that makes more money than you, for example,
that might be what starts his conversation.
That's what starts the conversation.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So most people don't actually disagree with each other. They're disagreeing with the conversation in their head that you triggered.
And I think
Your
with
face
Terry,
is you're kind of giving us the
You give
face.
so for
I'm taking
Hold on,
it in. It's one of those things
No,
that I
she's
have to
taking
go
it in. She's
listen
good.
Oh, yeah.
again
She's good.
So
to
let me-
really understand it. Like it's one of those things
No.
that I would ask you if I wasn't on IntellectualRadio.com live to repeat that again, because
She
one of those
would.
things I write
Yeah.
down so I can really understand what you're saying.
So let's share how it happens. I told you we just talked about this at church this morning. Here's how it happens.
What happens?
How
Explain
the
what you're saying.
conversation starts
With yourself.
with yourself. Let's say you have a baby 6 weeks old, right? And you know how you got to go back to work. And some people decide, you know what, I'm going to work, and there's nothing you can do about that. It's nothing bad or anything like that. You go back to work, and the baby cries in the crib at the daycare, and the daycare workers say, you know what, let the baby cry herself to sleep. The baby is crying, saying, I have a need. And the daycare worker is saying, I'm not going to meet your need. Now, the newborn has to tell his or herself why my need wasn't met. Whatever story that newborn, without the ability to actually speak words, makes up in his or her head, becomes the life story. And then you start looking for things to validate that. So some people may say they aren't meeting my needs because I'm not worthy. Some people might say they aren't meeting my needs because I'm not valued. Some people might say they're not meeting my needs because I'm not loved. Some people might say they're not meeting my needs because I'm not good enough. And whatever that story becomes the life story that you fight against whenever something comes up that does that. So if you say to a woman, hey, let's go out tonight, and she says, you know what, I don't feel like it. It triggers, I'm not valued. If she really wanted to go out with me, if she really valued me, she would stop and say, let's go out. If you don't know what that internal story is, that's what starts to happen. You start having a conversation with yourself. And here's what I tell my clients. I said, whatever you say, whatever your because is, she didn't go out with me because whatever that is after that, that's your story. That's your
But I
conversation.
don't think some people know they still don't connect that because, and like Toussaint said that most people move unconsciously.
Right. They
I
do.
really
It
do
is
think
unconscious.
there's many people who won't know how to tap into that because even if it came out their mouth, they'll still feel that someone else is there because of you.
Right.
Not,
You
not
take it-
because of any past thing
Right.
with me. It's going to always feel like you're creating it.
Here's a situation. Here's an example of kind of what James was talking about from a little older. I was probably 5, maybe 6, and I was in my recollection is we're sitting crowded around the television in my grandmother's room for some reason, even though we had a living room with the TV right outside. But we were crowded around, sitting around. There's 5 siblings, and there was maybe a handful of us there. And we're watching one of these like Perry Como, Lawrence Welk kind of shows. It was a Christmas thing, and they had these kids singing. There was this really pretty girl who was probably about my age in the group, and I mean, I just fixated in on like, wow, she's so pretty, whatever. And I just remember saying, wow, I said she's looking right at me, or it's like she's looking right at me. And my mother said, she wouldn't be looking at you. That's what I heard. That's what I heard. That's not what she said. I know that for a fact that's not what she said, because this is my mother. My brothers and sisters to this day think I was her favorite. I mean, not favorite, at least she beat me the least and all that. I was like, I'm not as bad as y'all, that's why. But she kissed on me and hugged on me, and I was her baby boy, her youngest son. And what she said, even in the moment, she didn't say she wouldn't be looking at you. She actually said she's not looking at you.
Right.
But I still heard it as, oh, she wouldn't look at me because I'm this, whatever. And years and years later, I sat up, and my mother's been gone now 20-some years. I died laughing one day. And I said, she was like, little boy, that girl can't look through that TV. But
It was more literal.
Look, but I heard she wouldn't be looking at you. And when I tell you that until my 40s, I stood across,
And hearing that from your mother
across a club like, oh man, she's so fine.
She wouldn't
be looking at me.
Bingo.
She wouldn't be looking at me. And while I still had success in a sense with women and whatever, because I learned how to meet women in context and pick up the different cues, literally walking across a bar to talk to a woman today is the most stomach turning thing, because what you gonna say when you get over there? She ain't looking
She
at you.
wouldn't be looking
And it
at
isn't
you.
my mother's voice. It was never my mother's voice, but it was
your
that
voice.
experience and I never really thought about what a specific moment it was. And it might not have been that moment. It might have been a different moment, but that moment came back to me. And I remember just busting up laughing just about 5 years ago. It was just 20, almost 15, 20 years after my mother was gone. Just laughing. Look, she was like, little boy, that girl cannot see you through the television. But what she said was, she's not looking at you. And I walked around for 35 years with, she ain't looking at that woman, ain't looking at you. And I've told my siblings and other people about self-esteem issues that I've struggled with. And my sister literally ripped her head around when they're like, why would you be struggling with self-esteem? You got this and you do that and you do. And I'm like, if I knew, I wouldn't fix it. I don't know, but it's those kind of being teased as children and all those different things, bedwetting and everything else that makes a kid feel less than. And like you said, Wanda, it's subconscious. We don't necessarily know, but we can get in touch with what is the conversation.
What is the subconscious
conversation? What are those conversations we're having when somebody, the smallest criticism gets you thinking, something really horrible? If you get in touch with that, then you can start to unpack it and say, wow, there is a conversation already happening.
And I want to take this moment real quick to mention Journey to Wholeness Center. Please. They're located at 9501 New England in Oak Lawn. And they have practitioners who can help you with exactly that. They're trying to touch to that subconscious that you may not be able to even recognize or get to or think you have. Because I know a lot of people who feel like, oh, no, there's nothing there. But I will say that a practitioner that I know is very good at this. She does emotional clearing, and it won't take tons of sessions. I mean, if you tell her a situation, almost like Ernest retold a situation, or to get you to realize the moment that you had that feeling so you can find your because what she's very good at is teaching you the tools to get to have this conversation with yourself. Because sometimes because you don't recognize it, you can tell her a situation. She can ask you some different questions on how you felt when and different things. And you start to realize the first time you had that feeling, like Ernest can go right back to the first time he ever had that feeling of someone saying that and why he kept replaying it in his head. And so that type of emotional clearing is what they specialize in, is helping you find that and then giving you the tools to deal with it, how to replay that and fix it when you have these same interactions with same men over and over. I keep meeting the same type of man. I keep meeting this same type of woman who says this and does this. Now you recognize the conversation and because why it's happening to you. You start to be able to go back to, and I'll use your situation because you explained it so well, is that time and how you felt in that moment and how you can help yourself. She'll give you the tools now to start to feel differently about yourself, which then attracts different types of people because you feel differently about yourself. And then you don't say, I keep attracting the same. You will notice that everybody you attract are like-minded. And I do feel like since the emotional clearing and out my own personal self, people will say to me, oh, the people you have on your panel, the people you've been friends. I was like, no, I really just meet them on Facebook or meet them from happenstance. But I do truly believe it's where I am in my life that draws the people.
That's exactly right.
Draws the type of people that, and I used to even tell myself how I want to find people that don't think like me. But it just really is kind of just natural that people who really even share the same philosophies and we don't all agree. What I realized too is that doesn't mean that we all agree on every subject or different things, but that like-mindedness on their journey and path to be whole is important for the people that I start to draw to me.
That was well done.
So because I'm on a journey to wholeness. So I do want you to give them a call at 636-3664. JourneyToWholeness.org.
Say that number again.
Let me make sure I'm saying it. Because I did that off of clear memory, and I do want to make sure. JourneyToWholeness.org, 9501 New England, and I'm going to get the exact. I don't want to use my memory for this. 708-634-3664. 708-634-3664. They have anxiety relief. They have meditation, free meditation, where you can go and learn how to meditate, which then helps with a lot of this. So please give them a call. They have tons of workshops. So if you want to take baby steps into it, I see this anxiety relief workshop is Sunday, May 5th. It's $20, and you can learn how to release your anxiety within minutes on your own without medication. So that's one of their workshops they have coming up, and they have plenty. So check the website, journeytowholeness.org. And also, if you want help with what we just talked about, emotional clearing with Kim Plesha, you can find out her availability by appointment at journeytowholeness.org. Her schedule is there, and the number is 708-634-3664.
Amen. So,
yeah, I was just gonna say I remember my moment that I figured out what was the issue with like my confidence as far as what he was talking about, approaching women. I think I might have already shared that though when I got all the zeros.
I don't remember your zero story. Let's hear a short version of it.
I was 7th to 8th grade. Girls came out with a rating for the guys, and I got all zeros.
Was that like a zero, like the top?
0 out of 10. All zeros.
Oh Lord, Jesus. Then that's when he said, "I'm going to learn the
hold
wisdom."
up.
I will be the woman whisperer. From now on, I'm to know how all of them think.
And they had comments, and one of the comments said, "Okira Hollis, he's not ugly, he's oogly."
Ouch! Are you laughing today?
They said your mama said you ugly.
Lord.
So I'm telling you, it destroyed. And I mean, I still got girlfriends, kind of, just like if a girl liked me or whatever. But I never had the confidence to actually like go what I call hunting, like actually go approach a girl, pursue a girl, this, that, and the other. Like if they like me, then, I could work within that. But actually having the confidence to say, hey, I like you, want to, this, that, and the other, didn't have that.
Wow. So I love that. And I think, like we mentioned, that sometimes we just don't know. And then I wanted to ask you, James, you mentioned like kindergarten, like infant, like your mama left you crying in the crib. Am I supposed to remember? I don't think I remember. I can't remember last week.
Check this out. Here. And see, this is where my profession comes in as a life coach. What I help people do is discover where your subconscious meets your conscious. And what you two described was a subconsciousness meeting your consciousness. Because the reason you interpreted your mom's story that way was because your subconscious met with your conscious, and now you remember it. But what that stems from, though, it goes back further and deeper into that. And so my job as a coach is to help you understand your because and how to combat your because and rewrite your story. So we go through life maps and things like that to help you discover all of the trauma points in your life, how to be all of the bullets that you've been shot with and how to become bulletproof. So you can find me at www.jamesborshade.com or info@jamesborshade.com is my email address, but it is critical. I specialize now with males. I do have females who contact me, but I've been over the last month, it's been a lot of males who are at their wits' end. Over the last month, I had about 4 men who said, "I'm ready to take my life. What do I do?"
Wow.
She left me. I'm ready to take my life. And I'm like, whoa. You need professional help. Here's the number to suicide prevention. I don't want to talk to them. I want to talk to you. Okay, let's talk. What happened? She said X, Y, Z. And how did that, why did that bother you so much? Because when you hear what they say, she said, to some men, it don't bother them. Why did that bother you so much? No, why did she say it? No. Why did that bother you so much?
So that I think really everything we're saying is playing a part in what we said we were going to talk about today. If people agree or you funny, do you agree or disagree with this point that the persons we let into our lives are reflections of our thinking?
It is. And it's not conscious thinking. They're reflections of your subconscious belief.
one of the things I've always thought is that it's hard. Not a lot of people are emotionally mature enough to be passionate about the things that they say that they want.
Say
So
that one more time.
not a lot of people are emotionally mature enough to be passionate about the things that they say that they want in other people. So for instance, you may say, hey, you know, I want a woman who's this, that, and the other. But then you find yourself with somebody who is totally opposite of that. And it has to do with the fact that because of your emotional baggage, that feels familiar to you. Like when you see women, they say, I want a good man. And then they have a good man that treats them well, who does this, does these things, but they don't have passion for him. Even though he does the things quite on, you know, quote unquote, on paper what they wanted, but they're not passionate about him. And they ended up, but they may be passionate about the guy who, you know, was doing, you know, doing things not the quote unquote best way. It's because it's hard for people to be emotionally, people are not as emotionally mature to be passionate about things that we really want. It takes a different type of person.
You know what they say psychology wise though? They say that happens because the person you say you want, you don't actually believe you deserve. So subconsciously you say, I want a good man. I want a man who does this. I want a man who does that. Or I want a good woman. I want a woman who does this, woman does that. And the reason that's coming out of your mouth is because you don't really believe you deserve that. And so when you get that, you screw that up because you don't really believe that's what you deserve.
Self-sabotage.
You self-sabotage.
It's an interesting thing because I've seen myself sabotage some situations and I've seen other people do it. And yeah,
I've done it.
Yeah, I definitely have. And I saw it one time, I saw it coming.
You watched yourself do it.
And I did it. You know, it's like,
I know. It's like an out-of-body experience.
I wasn't ready for this. I thought I was. I gotta get out of here, you know. So, but it's sort of like, I think what was the question? Let me make sure I answered the right way. Wanda, would you mind?
It was, do you agree with the point that the persons we let into our lives are reflections of our thinking?
Yeah, I think the two gentlemen hit it on the head. I mean, we have a view of ourselves and what we deserve. We also have a view of ourselves. We also have a view of what we think is sexy too, and what is interesting, and what is makes us feel secure, or what have you. I mean, you take, for example, the typical example of a man is, well, she's got to be pretty enough and sexy enough, somebody that feels unattainable, because that makes me feel good about getting her. When all the character pieces don't have much to do with that. And then on the other hand, with women, some women that I know, they've said that they need a man that can, you know, that can fix things around the house. And I say, well, I went to school, so I ain't got to do all that. So I
hire somebody to do that.
But that for some people, it's the feeling of, well, I need somebody I feel like I can walk down the street with and can protect me. So if somebody that's bigger than them, or somebody that looks the part, or they like a guy who's much more aggressive, right? But that leans toward a guy who's not quite as polished in other areas either, and certainly not concerned about your feelings, because he's aggressive about everything. And so there's this sense that we go after what we've defined in our head is good. And for that woman who likes a thug, or for that man who needs the trophy type looking person, that's what's good. And all the other stuff they say they want, like these guys were saying, it takes a back seat to what they really want. So a nice guy, you go back to the guy that, you know, is running around town and cheating on you, because that sexy, cool guy makes you feel more wanted, more desirable, because he still comes around from time to time. It makes me feel more desirable than this dude showing up every day. It's an interesting thing. It does reflect our thinking, because I think most people who are reasonably attractive and reasonably well-balanced and nice personality, you get multiple opportunities, and we tend to pick which ones we prioritize. And it says a lot about what we prioritize by what we pick.
This is why relationships end, because you pick a person who makes you feel good about you in the moment. And what ends up happening is you've picked somebody in the moment who you feel will make you feel good about you, or make you feel a way about yourself that you don't feel internally. But then we can no longer do that. Then they become at fault. When the root of it is you don't feel good about you. And so you basically rent a person to make you feel good about yourself. And they do initially. Oh, she buys me this, or he buys me flowers, and he make. How many times have you heard he makes me so happy? And I always say that's a recipe for disaster. Or she makes me complete. What you're doing is you are with somebody who you believe will make you feel a certain way about yourself that you don't feel, and when they can no longer do that, the relationship is ended. If you came into the relationship feeling a certain way about yourself, and then the two of you can enjoy your journeys together, as opposed to being responsible for making each other feel good, then you can have a joyful relationship.
So Toussaint said if we tapped into our conscious self, transactional relationships couldn't exist.
That's true. That's pretty much what I was just saying. If you really tapped into how you feel about you and why you feel that way, then you can start to let your mate off the hook for making you feel a certain way. Then transactions don't exist anymore, because most people are not in love, they're in need. Because love is, I love you for who you are, not for how you make me feel. How you make me feel is a need.
It's funny. I said that. Well, I didn't say those exact words. Never mind.
What did you say, Ernest?
Today I was
What'd
talking
you say?
to someone, and I was reflecting on someone that I had really, really a strong connection with at one point, and this person, wanted the commitment, and wanted to kind of move forward into something, and I wasn't. And I was trying to figure out all the reasons why. There were lots of reasons. Some of them had to do with just getting divorced, and others were, more about the interaction between us. And I remember saying, she wants something, and I forget how exactly. I should call my friend and see how I said it. I said, I knew she wanted something, and then I had it, versus she wanted me. It was kind of like she wanted that box filled, and because we were cool and getting along and attracted to each other,
you fit perfectly to what I have mapped out.
I had it.
So she liked maybe the idea of you better than
she liked the idea of you
better than the reality.
Than the reality, and I felt that as a kind of a sensitive soul. I felt that. It was kind of like, yeah, you keep trying. Every time I talk about how I feel about you, you point out, well, you're not the one that wanted the commitment and get into a relationship and blah. And I go, but I don't feel from you that you are really wanting me, like me as a person, not me in a relationship. So it wasn't a deep point. It was subtle, but it was critical.
But is that your story though?
In that situation, I don't know for sure if it was my story or not. But whether it was my story or not, I didn't get what I needed to be secure in that relationship to go, I'm going to put my emotional eggs in that basket. Two things. One was, I didn't know if the timing was right for me and that person, because I still, even after that conversation, I still thought maybe later. But the other thing I realized was I wasn't ready yet. I was coming out of marriage.
That's different.
And I just was like, yeah, I'm not in a place where I can bring to the table this whole person,
a whole man,
who isn't swayed and moved every which way by what that woman I'm dating says. So I actually answer even today for, I knew that I was doing the right thing by sitting out a period of time and, dating casually, but not getting too serious. But now I get another piece
reason
of the puzzle,
why,
which is another reason besides the ones I already had is, I didn't need to be getting into something broken like that. I need to get into something when I'm whole and ready. And that's when it's right. And that's why some people meet their next wife or husband the day after the ink dries on the divorce, and they're happy for 30 years. And some people take 5-10 years and then meet their spouse. So for me, I just decided I'm going to just trust my sense of my self-awareness about what I'm really ready for. Because then if I don't feel ready, it doesn't matter that I don't have a good reason I don't feel ready. It's just I don't. And
I think you answered it though, or listening to your story and the path you've taken. If at that moment that story in your head that your mother said to you, what you thought your mother said, or how you interpreted
Yeah, the
that
5-year-old,
moment,
yeah. Mhm.
that 5-year-old moment, it was like she was doing the same, putting you had that same feeling right there in that moment.
Same
Right.
You
feeling.
had that
Right.
exact
Not
same
good
feeling. You
enough.
didn't know why or
Go
how to
back.
get
Yeah.
to it yet.
They want me, but they don't
Really want you
me.
had
They want what you
That's the
have. But they don't want
same
it's the
story.
exact
it's just a
story.
morphed version of that same story. And that's when I had to be real careful, because even with my ex-wife, for example, you couldn't convince me that she didn't. You couldn't have told me that she loved me
See?
at a certain point, right? And then intellectually, I said she had my back and all of that. But I know now that she did. And I think there was some questions in her mind about me too. And I think she knows now that I did and do. We talked the other day, and she's like, we both said the same thing. We still family. We still consider each other family, and our families are still family. And that's after 7 years of marriage. And so from that point of view, that freedom has been so great for me to be able to look back at that and go, yeah, she wasn't rejecting you. That was her, and as she discussed to me a year after we were kind of going through our divorce, that was how I watched my mom, who's the sweetest woman in the world, by the way, interact with my dad. And all that silent treatment came from watching that, because her mother would prefer not to argue, so the silent treatment came. I got the things I brought, the bugging her and getting all bent out of shape when she gave me the silent treatment, from my dad, and the way he reacted to my mom when she didn't talk to him. So it was like we were becoming our respective parents, if you will, in that marriage. And I didn't know how to handle it inside. And so now, having been out, wow, we've grown, and so whatever that leads to next, we'll see. But I'm just grateful for the growth.
There's this book called The Four Agreements, and it talks about don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And basically what it discusses is that, how people act is basically just a reflection of their past. And you shouldn't take it personally, because it really has very little to do with you. And that is something that is hard for us as individuals to do, is to not take things personally, even though the vast majority of the time, like he was discussing, it had nothing to do with you. It had, the way his wife was acting had nothing to do with him. It was because of what she learned, and the way that he was acting didn't really have anything to do with her. It was because of the way that he learned. And sometimes if we could just kind of grasp that concept and look at it, it's easier to have empathy for another.
I think it's also a start, because if you work on just doing that has nothing to do with me, you still may be working on how that affected you and how you felt in the moment and why that made you feel but if you do that first off while you're doing your work on the other end, that may help you in that moment. Because sometimes I don't think we realize in the moment, it's hard to kind of self-reflect on things sometimes in the moment. But if you just go, that's not about me, and then you can work it out later, it helps you in the moment.
Exactly. Because it is hard, because I can't remember. I read the book.
Because it feels like it's about you when they say it's about you.
Right.
But the thing to recognize here, though, is if you never learn anything from Coach James, know this: most people are not in a relationship with the person. You're in a relationship with the story in your head. And most people never run away from or leave the other person. They're running from the story in their head. This is why they never escape it. This is why you can go from one relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship to the next relationship, and it seems like you're having the exact same relationship, because you are. You're having the relationship with the person or the story in your head. And so if you don't fix or get a grip on the person in your head, you will never have a whole, good, joyful relationship. But most people don't run from the mate. They're running from the person in their head. They're running from the enemy, inner me. And so if you don't adjust that or deal with that story, you heard me say this 1,000 times, Wanda. There is no more important story than the story you tell you about you.
There's something that I want to kind of ask or put out. I know we don't have a lot of time, so we can maybe talk about this another time or after this. But at what point do you realize, or like he was saying about the young lady who he felt like may have liked the idea better than his reality? At what point is it not your lens being colored by your past, and it is an accurate evaluation of the person. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
right.
here's a low budget, I ain't gonna pay James his fee answer to get to there. The low budget answer is, if it's the story that you have told in multiple scenarios across different disciplines, then it's your story in your head. So for example, if it's they don't like me and that's your story at work, at home, with your friends and the girl, that's you.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's something the person has said, I don't like, that's the other person. Most of the time, we don't give the person the opportunity to tell us honestly what's on their heart or their mind. So take people, most, not all, at their word until they prove differently. So she may have just said to you, no, I do like you, I'm just terrified.
Mm-hmm.
But you never get a chance to say that because you've already told her what her story is.
Right.
In fact, one of the people who I had that conversation with, in fact, it's a different one than what I was thinking of. When we talked later, and we were still involved at that point, but we had some space between us. I'd moved away and all that kind of stuff. When we talked later, we were able, because we were out of the emotional moment of what was going on with both of our lives, we were able to discuss what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to express a little better with a little time and distance. This is what my fears and my anxieties were. And then she was able to say, yeah, but I didn't want to open up and express these things because of these things. And then her sort of holding herself back kind of feeling wasn't about, oh, I don't want you. It was about, well, she was afraid to put it out there first, for example, right?
Okay.
Or she
Are we running out of time? This goes by so fast. I always feel like 2 hours. Oh, what are we going to talk about for 2 hours? And then it goes by and we haven't said everything we want to say. I want to say thank you to the people on Facebook, social media who share, John Russo, April, Brenda, Shantae, Lynn, the people who join in the conversation. Terry Connor, please check out her book. Terry, leave the information for your book, a very good read. So please get her book. And Toussaint Warner for always chiming in. Thank you so much, Cherie, and everyone else who added to our conversation. I appreciate you so much. How can they reach you, James? I'm late. Okay, I just have to go. I'm sorry, I gotta go. Thank you, y'all. See you next week. Okay, I'm sorry, Earl. Oh, she's a real deal, keeping it real for real. Keeping it real with Wanda B. Oh, all inclusion, no confusion. The he said, she said, clearing up the drama.